Doctor Who's first explicitly trans character hit our screens in 2005. The villainous Cassandra O'Brien.Delta-17 was a flap of skin attached to a frame, her brain in a jar underneath, who, like so many LGBT people, needed to be constantly moisturised to keep from drying out.
Moisturise me.
She'd had so much surgery trying to be thinner that she'd basically had her entire body removed.
I've had my chin completely taken away, and look at the difference. Look how thin I am.
Created by head writer Russell T Davies, her transness is only revealed in a passing remark when she says,
"That's where I used to live when I was a little boy, down there."
In her second appearance, her brain dies when she tries to take over the Doctor and Rose's bodies.
Cassandra? Goodness me, I'm a man. Young. So many parts. And hardly used.
In a short story by Davies, it's revealed that she's a con artist who has transitioned back and forth multiple times, conning and killing her way through the universe. Needless to say, Cassandra is a controversial character, especially as the first and only trans representation the show would have for the next 17 years. Russell T Davies was no stranger to controversy, having penned the groundbreaking gay drama Queer as Folk back in 1999, where he managed to piss off both straight and gay people.
I was really disappointed at the way gay men were portrayed. The characters were promiscuous from the beginning, and that's how it continued.
They really played to every prejudice and stereotype in the book, and I think it will be quite damaging and send a pretty awful message.
Followed by another controversial drama about a gay man falling in love with a woman. Even in his first season of Doctor Who, he not only introduced bisexual swashbuckler Captain Jack Harkness, having him kiss both the Doctor and Rose, but he also managed to piss people off when Rose used the word gay as an insult.
Your face.
It hurts.
It's so gay.
So, no stranger to controversy, the showrunner has now returned to Doctor Who with the 2023 specials and the 2024 season, and he's already run into trouble. You see, Doctor Who did a pronouns, and everyone was immediately traumatised, and it's all because of this beautiful little fucker. Look at that fluffy little face. God, I love it. Oh, no, wait. What's the right pronoun? When the Doctor assumes he, a trans girl replies,
"You're assuming he as a pronoun."
Oh, the line delivery. It's all a bit, did you just assume my gender? So the Doctor asks the fluffball,
"Are you he or she or they?"
My chosen pronoun is the definite article. I am always the meep.
I do that.
I mean, this did feel a bit public service announcement. You half expect the Doctor to turn to the camera and say, "And a very merry pronouns to all of you at home." And what do you mean your pronoun is the definite article? Your pronoun is the? Your pronouns are the? What are we supposed to say? The is a space alien. Look how fluffy the is. I would die for the. Even if that is evil, I love the so much. Obviously, the Conservatives were triggered. Apparently, the BBC received 144 complaints from viewers saying the inclusion of a trans person was inappropriate. 144, probably not quite the army the transphobes were hoping for out of the 7.5 million viewers. But you know what? I also talked to trans people who were thoroughly cringed by it. Like, thanks so much, but it is a bit embarrassing on like the level of like your mum showing your baby pictures to your worst enemy. Unless it's not. Unless it's actually a genius bit of writing which weaves together the entire history of gender in Doctor Who to ask one of the most pressing questions of our time. Is Doctor Who transgender now? Is Lord of the Rings gay? Is Doctor Who transgender? This is a terrible channel and you should unsubscribe. After 54 years of the Doctor being played by a man, the Doctor regenerated into a new body, now played by Jodie Whittaker, the first woman to play the part. Unfortunately, this new era of the show was a bit shit. I say shit, but it wasn't like watching a train wreck, it was more like watching paint dry. But this time, it was a woman painting it, so it was feminist paint. But was the Doctor really a woman now? Is gender so simple in the world of Doctor Who? For instance, the Loch Ness Monster back in the 70s was referred to with he, him pronouns, but the shape-shifting Zygons would drink his milk. So I don't quite know what's going on there, but more power to him. Nessie Big Naturals. K9 is a robot dog, but uses he, him pronouns. Was K9 assigned his gender by his creator? Or did K9 choose his own gender identity, just to ruin J.K. Rowling's childhood? When Perry's brain is taken over by a man, transitioning slug to human, we get a comment about new pronouns.
Now I am she, alive within this oh so wonderful, wonderful frame.
But did the new Doctor identify as a woman? I mean, her gender seems to be almost assigned to her when she meets her first companion.
Why are you calling me madam?
Because you're a woman?
Am I? Does it suit me?
And she seemed to repeatedly forget about it.
Come to Daddy. I mean, Mummy. The marvellous, apparating man. Lady. Apparating lady. Every time
female.
It was almost as if the Doctor was still a man, still identifying as a man, and was just played by a woman. Well, when asked by David Tennant if she would be playing the character as someone going through a gender transition, Jodie Whittaker said no, she wouldn't. And when designing her costume, she based the whole look on a photo she found online, which became the inspiration because
it felt timeless. It was neither male or female, which was really important to me.
So, did the Doctor really become a woman? She didn't play it as a gender transition, she wanted an androgynous look, and the new head writer, Chris Chibnall, wrote her as if she still thought of herself as a man. And in fact, the other writers on her first series weren't told that the new Doctor would be a woman. Chibnall said, "It's very hard for me to think of a decision that the Doctor has taken in 55 years that is a gender-based decision or action. I'd really struggle to think of one." True, it's really hard to think of one. I mean, you'd have to go back at least a few dozen episodes, such as the 2 occasions in Stephen Moffat's era in which the Doctor is unable to save the day because he doesn't have a uterus. And actually, in the episode in which Peter Capaldi regenerates into Jodie Whittaker, the first Doctor is portrayed as a misogynist, telling his companion to clean the TARDIS and threatening to spank her for being naughty. The 2010s were a simpler time. And actually, literally hours before the Doctor meets Yaz, Bill gives this whole speech about how she's a lesbian and would never fancy the Doctor because he's a man. The Doctor may be an unusual hero in some respects, but the history of the show is nothing if not gendered, with an often patriarchal dynamic between the male Doctors and his usually young, gorgeous girl companion. The Doctor is inspired by traditional male archetypes: Sherlock Holmes, James Bond, Charlie Chaplin.
What are you like?
I don't know. Gandalf. Bit of space Gandalf. Or the little green one in Star Wars. Woman.
But I get what Chibnall means, really. The Doctor can be a woman. There's no reason the Doctor couldn't be played by a woman. Except that the Doctor's past may complicate this. As a man, a white man at that, the Doctor has had access to history in ways a woman might not have.
Just because you're a man, you think you're superior, do you?
No, I didn't say that. Of course, it's true.
Have you no girls beyond the stars? No women to do the lowly work?
It would be different if I was a man. But I'm only a girl.
Since she is only a female, her activities are of little importance.
Go out there dressed like that, you'll start a riot, Barbarella.
The prophecies of women are limited and dull.
But even if this Doctor is more or less written the same as she was when she was a man, what about this idea of an androgynous costume? How did that work out? Does that help us make sense of her gender? Well, the Doctor's outfit always says something about them. The 11th Doctor's costume says this is an old man in the body of a young man, and that's very literally his character. The 10th Doctor's outfit is geek chic. The 3rd Doctor says this guy works for the military, sure, but he dresses like a rock star, so you know he's a dirty little slut. And the 6th Doctor's outfit says quite cleverly and quite brilliantly that the producer is an idiot and needs sacking. You need to be able to read the Doctor's character, in part, just at a glance. But how do you design a female version of the Doctor? Well, it had kind of been done before.
I have a complaint to make.
The Doctor's companion Romana was also a Time Lord, and her looks often had a very Doctorish vibe, on one occasion being literally a pink and white version of his costume. Many of her looks are masculine while still definitely feminine. They're timeless but modern. Some play with the androgyny of historical masculine dress. This was an Edwardian boy's swimming costume, but on Romana in 1980, it looks cute and it looks feminine, but it still has this androgynous edge to it because of its history. It's like time-traveling gender fashion. This outfit might have looked masculine in the 19th century, but in 2024, she would just be like a dark academia TikTok influencer.
In a way, they were so eclectic and kind of mismatched and muddled through that doesn't date, because it can't. It sort of isn't any date.
What a great idea. I love that. Time and gender. So Jodie Whittaker was maybe going for a similar vibe to some of Romana's costumes then. Something beyond time and beyond gender. Something which quite explicitly said, this person is doing gender and they're doing it hard. Did she succeed? Well, is there anything actually masculine about this costume? I mean, she's wearing trousers, I guess. You know, boys wear trousers, so I can see that. Yeah, totally. God, I'm trying so hard to talk about the 13th Doctor's era without totally slagging it off. I have an angel on my shoulder called the Meep, and a devil on my other shoulder, also called the Meep. But is this costume actually androgynous? Not really. It's feminine enough that when Russell T Davies returned, bringing David Tennant back as the 14th Doctor, he refused to have Tennant wear Whittaker's clothing after regenerating because he was worried it would seem like drag and he didn't want the papers making stupid headlines taking the piss out of a man wearing women's clothes. Which I have mixed feelings about, but the point is this outfit was so feminine, Davis thought it would read as drag if a man wore it. So I don't think the costume succeeds as androgynous. I don't think it says what she wanted it to say. I don't think it communicates the characterization of this Doctor as a man who just happens to look like a woman. But then what does it say about the Doctor? What does it communicate?
I love these colours because this to me is space and this is the sky that I fell through.
to kind of land on Earth.
Ah yes, blue, the famous Doctor Who colour symbolising the sky.
There's a whole journey of stars and hands. So there's silver stars there, which is essentially where I've come from, obviously. And the chain is the journey. The rose gold hand is humanity.
Okay, I've never been able to see any of that in an episode, but sure, okay.
Violet and green were the colours of the suffragettes. So I said to Jodie, can I put violet in the sleeves?
Yeah, and it's brilliant.
What are you talking about? The premise in this show is that the Doctor found these clothes in a charity shop. She didn't get them custom made to tell a story about the suffragettes in the inner sleeves. She didn't pick her jacket because it looked like the colours of the sky. Which one? These references aren't part of a meaningful visual language for the audience. Like Edwardian boys' fashion, for instance, is a very legible, tangible reference. It says something about history and gender. Or when Romana wears a Doctor's costume, but it's pink. It's very simply saying she is the same as the Doctor, but a girl. But this idea of her jacket is blue like the sky and the Doctor comes from the sky is not a reference the audience is going to be able to read easily. There's no fashion vocabulary for woman wears all the colours of the sky. It's too abstract. Details like Romana's fob watch chain evoke very specific references. It says Victorian, it says masculine, and you can read that at a glance. But the 13th Doctor's earring, which is barely visible anyway, doesn't communicate anything to the audience. It's just a fun thing for Jodie and the costume designer. Time travel fashion is tricky. There's no such thing as genuinely timeless fashion. Everything dates. But if you can take something historical and reinterpret it in a contemporary way, you can communicate to a modern audience that this is a timey-wimey costume on a timey-wimey person. Romana's costumes largely succeeded in communicating timelessness and even androgyny because Romana's costumes actually allude to different eras of fashion, as if she picked up random items in her travels along the way. But the 13th Doctor's costume doesn't really refer to anything. It doesn't communicate timelessness. It barely communicates androgyny. I think in the 21st century, putting a woman in big loose trousers and acting like you're doing an androgyny is a bit of a stretch. And if we take a look back at that photograph, what really makes this feel genderless? Well, it's the haircut, right? She has a masculine haircut, it's lesbian chic, and it looks super cool. And the Doctor usually has cool, weird hair. The second Doctor had a Beatles haircut in the 60s while wearing a frock coat and a bow tie. David Tennant's hair was modern and absolutely iconic. But Jodie Whittaker has like 90s mum hair, which is fine, but if you're going for androgyny or a quirky look, you have to go further than this. All of this would be alright if there were any versatility to the costume whatsoever. The Doctor has purchased, presumably from that charity shop, a whole stack of graphic tees of all different colours and sizes, all with the same graphic on the front. The idea of trying to make a Doctor Who costume which is both timeless and genderless is a fascinating one, but I think it needs to be something which can be versatile, something which can be either feminine or masculine with slight adjustments. Wouldn't that have been cool? Or otherwise just let her do a Romana and wear whatever she likes, maybe adding to her costume as she visits different times and places. Maybe like the 15th Doctor, give her an iconic coat and then let the costume underneath vary. To be honest, the Fugitive Doctor got it all right and I have 0 notes for her. It's Victorian, but it's modern, it's androgynous, and the contrast between the African wax print and the tweed is beautiful. There's actually a picture of them together and Jodie Whittaker's outfit really is the colour of the sky. Cloudy and miserable. Oh god, the devil meep is clearly winning. 4 solid years of a cloudy, miserable sky. Androgyny is a world that I very much live in, and it's complicated. But what the Doctor Who team went for with this costume gave us nothing. But the costume is emblematic of so much of what's wrong with the 13th Doctor. She just lacks any depth. This wasn't thought through. Next to the Fugitive Doctor, next to Romana, this Doctor's costume looks so cheap and flimsy, it's genuinely depressing. They were like, you know what young girls hate? Fashion. What little girl wants to look up to a fashion icon? Yuck. And so the Doctor still hasn't put on a dress since 1973. I remember back in 2013 the cries of frustration from my roommates when they saw the preview of Peter Capaldi's old white man hands just before he was announced as the 12th Doctor, because we were ready for someone different. With traditionally male roles in properties like Star Wars being given more and more to women, the market trends were definitely in favour of a female Doctor, and so were the fans. But Doctor Who had a problem other heroes didn't. This wasn't a girl version of the Doctor like Superman's cousin Supergirl. This was as if Superman had casually turned into a woman and then got on with his life as if it was no big deal. The male hero, the Doctor, had to transition, had to change pronouns. Now she wore earrings and makeup and showed off more skin and was never ever allowed to tie her hair back. Transitioning your male superhero is an unusual challenge which perhaps this group of creators was not quite prepared for. If only there was some other sci-fi character from another franchise somewhere to take inspiration from. Jadzia Dax from the 90s Star Trek series Deep Space Nine belonged to a species who kind of had a similar deal to the Doctor. Their memories could be passed on. So in Dax's case, she had been a pervy old man who was now in the body of a brilliant young woman. And though it takes a few seasons to get to it, you can really feel that. Almost in the way that the 11th Doctor is an old man in a young man's body, you really sometimes feel that Dax is a man. But the Doctor's transition wasn't explored in any meaningful way, and it wasn't explored in a particularly fun way. Yeah, there are a few jokes about how she used to be a man.
Never did this when I was a man.
But whatever, half my friends talk this way anyway, so it's really not that special anymore. The 13th Doctor was not a fully fleshed out female hero. She wasn't a fully fleshed out male hero, and the show wasn't particularly interested in making her non-binary either. The 13th Doctor was inevitably going to be a woman because another Peter Capaldi just wouldn't cut it. But they didn't know what to do with her. Where the Doctor's gender had been at least somewhat significant to the characterization in the past, Chibnall just couldn't figure out what to do with the transitioned Doctor, and like so much of this era, she just ended up being bland. But the Doctor's people, the Time Lords, are meant to be gender fluid, right? As the 12th Doctor said,
"We're the most civilized civilization in the universe. We're billions of years beyond your petty human obsession with gender and its associated stereotypes."
Which sounds great in a modern context, but the original series doesn't quite back it up. In those days, the Time Lords were almost exclusively men, literally having episodes where there are no women in the entire serial because all of the Time Lords are men. In fact, in the classic series, there are often almost exclusively men in the show, with the companion one of the, if not the, only woman. Because even the monsters are all played by men. The Cybermen will convert you to a Cyberman whether you like it or not. They're all played by male actors, as are the Daleks, as are the Sontarans, as are the original Silurians, the Sensorites, the Zygons. And unless we're talking about space lesbians,
we have a small number of men, as many as we need. The rest we kill.
All the other aliens are probably going to be played by men. And most of the old school aliens appearing in the new Doctor Who will be the same. Whenever a Stephen Moffat companion gets turned into a Dalek or a Cyberman, which happens quite a lot actually, they'll always be played by men. So even when these creatures are meant to be completely genderless and sexless, they're usually still he, hims. Even the Meep has he, him pronouns in the original comic. The novelization uses they, them pronouns for the Meep, but Davies' script actually uses he, him pronouns only once, replacing he with it. But probably the first time Doctor Who had an explicitly non-binary character was 52 years ago with this giant talking p***s named Alpha Centauri.
It's the Doctor! Alpha Centauri, my dear fella.
Or is he a she?
Neither. She's an it. It's a hermaphrodite hexapod.
Being a hermaphrodite hexapod, Alpha Centauri finds it tricky to tell the difference between men and women.
Not the female?
How did you come across that voice?
Well, I was told we want the pure voice of a young boy with the mentality of a homosexual civil servant.
But despite the fact that the character was neither a man nor a woman, everyone usually refers to Alpha Centauri with he, him pronouns. The Sontarans are also a monogender race of he, hims, and they also struggle to tell men and women apart.
Girl, you have two species on this planet.
But we still use he, him pronouns for these little potato NBs.
Silence, boy!
Two genders is a bit further than he can count.
The Daleks and the Cybermen are called either it or him interchangeably. How do I know all this? Because I just spent the last few months obsessively making notes about everyone's pronoun use in Doctor Who. I am a perfectly healthy person, and I have friends.
Be my friend.
In English, it is a pronoun generally reserved for objects, but can be used to dehumanize people. And that's literally what the Cybermen and the Daleks are. Dehumanized. The Daleks were once people called Khaleds who were mutated into the creatures they are now, no longer people to our eyes, but monsters. The Cybermen are humans stripped of their humanity, turned into soulless cyborgs, their body parts replaced until they're no longer people. It's all quite ableist, actually. In this iteration, they've become a brand with a logo on their chest. That is part of how their humanity is lost, as our souls are absorbed into brand loyalty. But the creators of the Daleks and the Cybermen are men. They're still he, him, while their creations become it, a thing that is no longer human.
You absolutely had to bring her, did you?
Her? It's a Cyberman now.
And if we can sufficiently dehumanize someone, then we're all the more comfortable blowing their heads off or destroying their homes. It is the other gender-neutral pronoun, the one which says, you're not a real person anymore.
She's got a name, you know.
She's not even a she, she's a thing.
But when a Dalek, for instance, like Dalek Sek or Khan, is given a name, That's when we can't help but give them gender. These guys have he, him pronouns. Sometimes just a name or a title is enough to take them from being an it to a he. Gender and our humanity seem to go hand in hand. To their enslavers, an ood is an it.
I'd suggest a post-mortem, which means it's got to be dead first.
While the doctor who wants to free them uses he pronouns.
It's a he, not an it.
Part of the horror of the Cybermen is that they will remove all features that make us individuals, including gender.
Cybermen will remove sex and class and colour and creed.
Didn't you used to be a woman?
The Daleks are made in a lab and the Sontarans are clones. In this universe, to lose gender is to lose a piece of our humanity, which is exactly what has happened to these terrifying monsters. It's only in Torchwood that we ever see a cyber woman, but that's only because she's incomplete. She's still largely human. So the Daleks, Cybermen and Sontarans all represent a loss of individuality, a loss of self, a loss of diversity.
You shall be like us.
These creatures stagnate, while the Doctor and friends are individuals, constantly changing. In fact, the Doctor has a literal plurality of individuality. But generally, the gender of these aliens is not terribly well thought through. Okay, so the Sontarans were established early as not understanding two genders, but even in recent times, the gag around them is essentially that they are men who don't understand what women are.
Who's he?
Strax should be like Alpha Centauri or the Meep, right? So why does genderlessness seem to usually default to men? How can men be gender neutral? Well, Ursula K. Le Guin did something similar with her non-binary aliens back in the 60s, an entire planet full of he, hims only. Because of course in English, he is considered to be the singular generic pronoun, right? Each student must do his own homework.
Is a slave a slave? If he doesn't know, he's enslaved.
Simple. He totally works for everyone. Except, of course, pronouns have been a feminist battleground for literally hundreds of years. In the 19th century, those opposed to women's right to vote would argue that documents declaring his right to vote naturally only referred to men. There's no she pronoun anywhere in the American Constitution now, is there? Selective use of he as the generic pronoun has long been used to enforce discrimination against women. He refers to everyone when it's convenient, but at other times only refers to men. So what's the alternative? Well, there have been many alternative pronouns over the centuries, but at the moment the pronouns which seem to be winning are they, them. And before anyone throws a tantrum over singular they, the use of they as a singular generic pronoun is at least 650 years old. There's no real debate about singular they. It's been a thing for longer than any human has lived, so...
Who's they? I don't know, but it is the right personal pronoun. It's they.
Ursula K. Le Guin came to regret sticking to he, him pronouns for her non-binary aliens and started playing with alternative pronouns in the 80s, calling the haters grammar bullies. She saw the use of neutral pronouns as feminist, pushing back against patriarchal language. But in good old Doctor Who, even while the main character was transitioning gender, the topic of pronouns was never really brought up until now. So this creature, the Meep, originates in a comic strip from 1980. The Meep appears to be just a cute little fluffy baby fluffy guy, but turns out to be an evil intergalactic criminal. The creepy bug aliens chasing the Meep, on the other hand, turn out to be the goodies. The comic quickly became a classic story, but the Meep had never actually appeared on television until this adaptation. While the Meep had used he, him pronouns in the comic, the TV Meep seems to use no pronouns at all.
My chosen pronoun is the definite article.
And this is obviously a joke. The Meep only wants to be called the Meep because they're an evil intergalactic conqueror like a monarch.
Hail to the Meep! Hail to the Most High! Hail to the Meep!
The joke doesn't really land, but the important part is that the question was asked. And the next episode follows up on the pronoun question when Donna casually asks about an equine alien.
Did they throw him out? Her out? Them out?
Her, I wonder.
And this time, I think it works, and it's comfortable and easy and simple, and this is what the show will be like moving forward. Maleness will no longer be the default in the big wide universe, bitch. So the Meep and alien pronouns is gender theme number 1 of this episode. Gender theme number 2 is the Doctor, who has literally just transitioned back into a man at the beginning of the story. And by the time of the 60th anniversary specials and the Star Beast, there were kids out there for whom the Doctor had always been a woman.
Why is she a he?
So the Doctor changing gender was a big deal for many viewers. Official promotional materials have also changed the Doctor's pronoun. They're officially using they, them for the Doctor. So gender theme number 2 of this episode is the Doctor is a bit transgender now. And finally, gender theme number 3 is Rose Noble, the daughter of the Doctor's best friend Donna, who is introduced in this story for the first time. So Rose is a complicated character in a spacey-wacy sense. You see, her mother has a piece of the Doctor's mind in her brain buried away. This was passed down to Rose, so Rose also has a piece of the Doctor's mind buried away. This means that Rose has a bit of doctorishness to her without realising, and so does her mum. We learn that Rose's dead name was Jason, a name which essentially comes from the Greek word for doctor.
Which means that Donna actually named her child after the Doctor without realising it subconsciously.
At some point, when she decided to transition, she changed her name to Rose, the name of the Doctor's former companion. This girl said, I don't want to be the Doctor. I want to be Rose. This whole thing with her dead name is actually very blink and you'll miss it. The episode doesn't revolve around Rose's transness, but there are some nice moments, such as when her grandmother slips up and accidentally uses the wrong pronouns for her.
When I say she looks gorgeous, is that right? I mean, is it sexist? Never said it to him when he was... Oh, sorry.
And it's actually a very sweet moment of someone who cares messing up and feeling bad about it. Where the pronoun scene feels like a PSA, this just feels genuine. Of course, Sylvia is an old grandma doing her best but not quite getting it. It feels real and we love it. But more prominently, Rose's transness and her being dead-named by bullies serves to illustrate Donna's protectiveness over her.
I would burn down the world for you, darling. Anyone has a go, I will be there and I will descend.
A protectiveness which will ultimately lead to Donna risking her life, to being ready to die for Rose.
You and I can stop this shit, but it will kill you.
Okay. My daughter is down there.
And also convincing the Doctor that letting Donna die is the right thing to do. So the gender themes are really not centre stage in this episode. It's about the Doctor and Donna and bringing them back together, bringing Donna back to the place she was back in 2008, so we can pick up that story. But these 3 themes come together for a really interesting conversation, one which, it has been mentioned, might be super fucking cringe. This moment is about the Doctor's pronouns. It's about letting a trans person actually be a trans person on Doctor Who for the first time ever and lead the conversation on gender transition. And it also opens up a whole new way of looking at the universe and thinking about aliens and gender. It's actually very clever and masterfully done. Unfortunately, it also sounds like a transphobic meme. Whoops.
You're assuming he as a pronoun.
I mean, this was definitely unintentional, and it isn't helped by the super awkward delivery of the line. And I think the joke of the definite article being the meeps and the Doctor's pronouns is lost in the grammar confusion and the cringe, so it all just seems weird and self-serious. And none of this is helped by one of the last scenes of the episodes, when those pieces of the Doctor's mind have to be removed from Rose and Donna, or they will die. But when the Doctor brings that up, they respond by saying,
It's a shame you're not a woman anymore. She'd have understood.
There is a way to get rid of it. Something a male-presenting Time Lord will never understand.
What? It's so weird to end on this note of gender essentialism that all these years the Doctor just didn't know how to deal with this because he was a man at the time. Was it always this easy? Could Donna have done this in 2008 because of her gender? Or is this just meant to be a joke? Donna teasing the Doctor and actually they were able to let it go because it's been split between the two of them? I don't know. It's not a very satisfying conclusion, and it is a very weird time to bring up gender, especially in an episode that seemed to be about transcending gender and gender fluidity. I've also heard people talk about the weird possibility that Rose might be trans because of her doctorishness.
Binary.
Non-binary.
We are binary.
She's not, because the Doctor's
male
and female.
And neither. And more.
People have interpreted this as meaning that Rose is non-binary and that she may be only transitioned because of her doctor brain, the meta crisis. But when she does let it go and is now only human, she says,
After all these years, I'm finally me.
I think what's happening here is the same thing as with her name. She wanted to be Rose, not the Doctor. And to be Rose is to be human. Rose is only non-binary in the sense that she is a Doctor metacrisis. She has a piece of Doctor brain, and of course the Doctor is non-binary. Within the narrative, I think the non-binary aspect is doctorishness, and being a transhuman girl named Rose is her choice. She chooses to let go of that part of herself that was the Doctor, that was Jason, that was non-binary. So when the Doctor's side is gone, she can finally just be Rose. But in a more meta sense, there's another reason for Rose's inclusion. David Tennant is not trans. Jodie Whittaker and Peter Capaldi aren't trans either. The only trans person to ever play a trans character on the show is Yasmin Finney as Rose Noble, which means Rose had to be the one to say that the Doctor is truly non-binary and beyond gender, because to appropriate transness for the Doctor without representing real trans people would just be kind of messed up. It's really beautiful in a way. So you see, it's actually not cringe at all. Just kidding. No, it's still cringe. And it definitely has vibes of how do you do, fellow kids? But his intentions were definitely good. As Davies put it, diversity on screen is improving across the board. The point now is for gatekeepers like me to make way for trans storytellers, because that's when you really improve things. And that's only going to happen if more space is made on screen for trans people. Trans people need to appear on television for young trans people to be able to consider working in that industry as a viable option. It is a good fight. Unfortunately, it was written by a cis man in his 60s who doesn't use Twitter, so it comes out in this weird, garbled version of online discourse and leaves us all feeling incredibly confused.
You're assuming he as a pronoun. Non-binary.
Male presenting Time Lord.
But despite its flaws, this episode said more about gender in Doctor Who than any episode has ever said before, and far more than the 4 previous years in which the Doctor had just transitioned into a woman. But I do have to say, Rose is not the most exciting trans character I've ever seen on television. I mean, Cassandra is a very dated portrayal, and I genuinely am glad that we have Rose now. But now I'm going to defend Cassandra the skin flap. The last time we see Cassandra, she's dying. She's done all this body hopping and now landed in a body which is dying. So the Doctor takes her back in time, sort of fulfilling a last wish, taking her back to the last time anyone ever told her she was beautiful. But then we discover that the person who called her beautiful was herself. This version of her from the future.
I just wanted to say, you look beautiful.
Well, that's very kind, you strange little thing.
You look so beautiful.
Suddenly, the younger Cassandra is filled with compassion when this stranger falls to the ground.
Someone get some help. Call a medic or something, quickly!
So Cassandra doesn't die alone because her own past self is there to hold and comfort her. These two versions of Cassandra give each other what they need most. It's such a complex, layered moment of kindness and humanity, and most importantly, it just has real heart. She might be a mass-murdering con artist, but I empathise with Cassandra, not in spite of how she's characterised, but because of how she's characterised. And I think that is a marvellous achievement. And while I've barely squeezed out an emotion watching Rose Noble, and I couldn't even empathise with the main heroes of the 13th Doctor's era, I have sobbed like a baby watching this scene. And you know what? The validity of Cassandra's gender is never called into question. In universe, her gender is not what makes her a villain. I think the worst problem with Cassandra is that she's played by a cis actress, and I would totally love to see a character like her again in Doctor Who, but now played by a trans actor, and maybe even written by a trans writer. Episode 2 of the new series is set to star Jinkx Monsoon as a villain, which I'm pretty excited about. But also, one of Ruby's friends is played by a trans actress, Mary Malone. And there's another trans actor, Pete McHale, who is set to appear in an upcoming episode. I just hope that they get roles as juicy as Cassandra, because although representing trans actors on screen is vital, I think it's just as important to make sure those characters get to be as complex and brilliant as any other, because what makes this ridiculous show, these wonderful, weird aliens and monsters and adventures truly come to life, is when they have heart. And I just want to remind everyone that if you're a fan of this show, you know that one of the Doctor's most important values is anti-violence. It's a show about standing up and doing what's right when no one else will. The Doctor has compassion for everyone, regardless of race, where they're from. So just to do our small part as Whovians, I recommend watching Doctor Who season premiere and then skipping Eurovision that night as we boycott. And also a reminder that the BDS movement asks us to put pressure on Disney at the moment. Disney has the international streaming rights to Doctor Who. They don't own it by any stretch of the imagination, but we should let them know what we think about the propaganda in their upcoming Captain America film, and ideally find other ways to watch Doctor Who. Thank you so much for watching this video. Please consider liking, and if you unsubscribed at the beginning of the video, please subscribe again if you enjoyed watching the video. I shouldn't have said that. Also consider becoming a member on Patreon, where you can check out exclusive content, including this Doctor Who video, The Smoke and Mirrors of Stephen Moffat. And we also have another video on this channel called Doctor Who vs. Women, if you want to check that out. Thank you so much to all of our patrons, and a very, very special thank you to Two Slices, Aaron Fisher, Adzi. Maybe I should make this more exciting, because this is the last time I'm going to read all the patrons aloud. Let's see. Two Slices, Aaron Fisher, Adzi, Sparkle Emoji, Elegante, Aaron, Agent Maxwell, AJ Mango, A.K. Ruth, Alexandrais. Or I can do like ASMR. Aaliyah Merriweather, Alex Zodro, Alien Cheryl, Amanda Kruger, Amelia D, Anna Maria Chipper, Ansat Stoitzer, Anya Stefan, Anton Fogin, Arapaima Slim, Ariel Rodriguez, Ade Mix, August, Aurora, Carabula, bear with me, Becky B, Besoro, Best Love, by Ronnie, Birdie, Brick Every Yoke, Bomb Girl, Button Semocart, Callum Parsons, Calypso, Cammy Everett, Carl, Common Sandiego, Producer Witch, Carolyn, Carina the Cardiff Goliath Mary, Casual Observer, Katrina Lexi, Charis Edwards. Can I do it really deep? Charlotte Held, Chelsea S, CJ Gibson, CJK, Claire, Clemence Levesque, Cleo McKeever, Comfort Nadam, Courtney Ray Kelly, Dan Hypocrisis, Danielle Brabander, Dax Dennis, Deems Didrill, Devorleres, oh fuck's sake, Devorleserin, I go through this every time, Devorleserin, 120416, Dorothy, Eden Ladley, I'm just going to go normal again now, because this is all getting a bit silly, let's be honest, Erie NB, Eleanor McDougall, I said Eden Ladley, didn't I? Eden Ladley, L like the L word, Alora Walmisley, Elsie Astro, Emile England, Emma Randall, Emmanuel, Emotional Support, Catboy. You know, okay, here's the tone of it. We do them all really emotionally. Emery James Fairgrieve, Enya, heart emoji, heart emoji, heart emoji. Ed Biestrudel, Erica Lygren, Eve Griffith, Evelyn Shell, Faye Crossroads, Fancy Angles, Fatal Drum, Fei, Feo, Fickle Harpy, Fluffy Bunny Boo, Fox E, Frank McManus, Friedrich Irons, Gabriel Popper, Gabriella Day, Gabriella, Gaia Win Moonwater, Galileo's Balls, Gavin Salmon, Ghost and You Might Die, Gillian Amortosaw, Ginger, Grace Robertson, Griselle Varben, Gillian Perez, Gwen Euphoria, Haku Gay, Anna Acker, Anna Burgess, Hayley LeBang, HB Hida, Hunka Munka, Infotoxin, Issy Costa, Jack Warren, Jackie King of Thieves, Jackie Elise, Jam Girl, Jamie Midge, Jackie K, Jax Monty, JK, Jessage, Gillian D, Joe McManus, Joseph, Jules Inkwell, Juliana Boulder's daughter, Juliana Backer, Julio Leota, Julio Mendez, Julia Sarwin. That's all the Jewel people. June, September, Juniper Lopez, Justin DeLima, Kale, Kara the gamer girl from Mars. Carolina Olikainen. Kat. Kata. Catherine Lennox. Katie Ballinger or Katie Ballinger or Ballinger. I'm really not sure. I'm sorry I didn't ask. I should have just asked. I have social anxiety, everyone. Kata. Katya. Kay Sarah. Kelatua. Kezia Garrett Smithson. Claudina Cott. Kyle Denley. Llama. Lee Fowler. Leggett Rem. Wait, isn't a Leggett from Star Trek like a Cardassian Leggett? Leland Culver. Lewis McLeod. Lee Hedstrom. Leanne Lermore. Lindsay Mercer. Lisa Spitalovitz. Lobster. Mogster. Logan Q. Loki Cassandra Harlequin Mellerin. Lorelei McLaughlin. Los Tunas. Maeve O. Mais Mercol. Ja, Julio. Margarita Stelle. Mary Bass. Mama Rayad. Marim. Math Class Warfare. Max Jarvella. Maxim Shulin. Meg. Melissa. Metavore. Mia Nilo. Mike McCaffrey. Milk Tea. Minerva Gale. Missing Intern. Mo. Mochibun. Moomba. Mrunmai Salil. Matheta. Mirren McGlynn. Mikey. Nenifar. Nicholas Venturo. Nick Snary. Nina Vangberg. Noah MacArthur. Nonny Mouse. Nora Carlson. Not specified. Ollie 1 2 3 4. Olivia Omar. Olivia Thiedemann. Ollie Futur. Orange Stuck. Paige McLaughlin. Panama Pauper. Panny Lynn. Paper Samurai 00. Pascal Andor. Patrick Button. Pelks. Pinky Socrates. Primrose Vera. Pseudo Pac-Man. Public Loser. Rachel O. Rachel Rat. Rochelle. Radical Planning. Radden Rosborough. Rainbow Unicorn. Ralph Giles. Raunchy Beeves. Reed Davidson. Renee Cohen. Red Peacock. River Felix. Robin Ellis. Rolling Eddie. RSS. Ruxandra Greco. Riasa. Sabrina Gross. Salem Samson. Mina Khan. Sarah and Sarah Buchelman. Oh, the Sarahs. Sarah Buchelman, Sarah R, and Sarah R, and then Sarah. I think the Jules people have them beat, though. Savannah Smith, Shoxtopia, Scott A. Snellgrove, Sean Haskett, Sean Miller, Selenia Latovera, Sean, Sierra Kaplan Nelson, Sierra Rhodes Sylvia, Simon, Patience, Sir Kiki Sithvich, Soham Benaria, Solisal Sonia J. Smith, soon to be Dr. Worm, Sophie Spooky Llama Tree, Stephen C. Stephen Gibson, Stephen Wallace, Summertime Killer, Susie S. Simone West, Tara Welling, Taria Peterside, Tegan Mulford T. Michael, Tess McCrea, Taylor White, the Baskinator, The Fisherman and the Priestess, The Nihilist, Theo Falling, Tiago, Tim Anderson, Tiny Wooden Tree, Tamerlan L. Okay, now we're going in for the big finale. Tom Harrison, Tom Mayo, Tovi Cherapanova, Troy Zayer, Valeria Berlux, do. It's the Hobbit, it's the Shire music. Valeria, Verlux Vicious Panda, Vicky Green, Vince Whitaker, Vincenz Reinfeld, Vivian Charlotte, Wards Weep Trash. It's not a very climactic song though, is it? Now we've got like 8 left to go. Which one did I last do? Weep Trash, Wesley Botham, Will O'Connor, Winterferger, Wizard, Wazzle, Jonathan Zunger, and Zet. That's it. That's them. That's all of them. And now I'm never going to do it again. Thanks, everyone. Thank you all so much. I hope you enjoyed this, like, very experience that we just had together. Thank you for getting me to the point where there's just an impractically high number of patrons to read, and in future it's going to be a scrolling list. But thank you for getting me to this place where this is a wonderful problem to have. Thank you so much. Okay, I said thank you a lot of times now. Goodbye.
He's a computer. He's my own personal data bank. He knows everything that I do, don't you, K9? Affirmative.
Take K9 back to the TARDIS. He's out of juice.
We'd never have managed without him. Her. It. Sorry, K9.
Apologies are not necessary.
Will he be all right?
It will be all right. It just has a little corrosion in its circuits.
I can call K9 he if I want to. You call the TARDIS she.
I'd better finish repairing it.
You called him him. You called him him!
I can call K9 him if I want to. He's my dog. Aren't you, K9?